Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Forever Motorsports on Forever Sports for the Forever F1 podcast. Every week we do a podcast live on the Forever Sports channel, all things to do with Formula One, and obviously we're going to go over lots of news that's happened in the last week, mainly, of course, the Grand Prix in Canada, where Max Verstappen won, Lewis Hamilton came third, Fernando Alonso came second, but the talk today, and certainly that's going to take up a little bit of our show mainly, is Mercedes revealing more upgrades to come, even more grand upgrades, more competitiveness possibly. Maybe they can actually challenge the Red Bulls very, very shortly. And of course, we are joined by Reece, who is now rocking the green screen, I notice, and the beautiful merch that you can obviously get for Forever Motorsports. So Reece, looking good this evening, and how are you feeling?
Yeah, thank you. Good to have the green screen feeling a little bit more official now. But yes, I think it's quite exciting to see Mercedes already fast tracking a whole bunch of upgrades. It certainly shows a lot of faith in their new spec car. I mean, they are already not too far off of the Red Bulls and the Aston Martins, so it's quite promising at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he went and said they've got larger upgrades coming over the next few weeks, so it's not going to be just one big upgrade package. It's going to be split across a couple of race weekends, and it mainly the bigger upgrades are going to be implemented for the British Grand Prix, of course, the home Grand Prix for Mercedes team, and for Lewis Hamilton and George Russell, of course, both of them British drivers. Toto Wolff's team obviously working out of Britain as well, so it's quite a special idea that Mercedes could maybe challenge Red Bull genuinely in Silverstone, of course, which is where the British fans love Mercedes. They want Lewis Hamilton to do well. They're obsessed with Lewis Hamilton, and it's certainly probably, if after Monaco, I'd say it's the next most iconic Grand Prix. So how apt would it be that Mercedes can somehow get these upgrades working for Silverstone?
I think they'll certainly be pushing quite hard. Of course, it's their home race. They've got two British drivers as well. I mean, they run through it. Mercedes is a German name, but everyone who works at that team is British. So they'll be wanting to have a good performance in the British Grand Prix, of course. But I don't know if they might just be wanting to fast track it so they have a little bit more time to learn how these new upgrades work. I think they're more looking towards next year more than this year, because they already know that they've kind of run out of time this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit late, but I suppose if they did manage to somehow win every Grand Prix from, round 12 onwards, they could come very, very close, because Perez has been rather dismal for Red Bull recently. He's not got as many points as the two Mercedes drivers, so one has to probably look at and see that Mercedes have been fairly consistent, at least in all their Grand Prix up to now. Obviously, George Russell not finishing this last weekend did not help matters at all, but at least Lewis Hamilton then finished second, so got a lot of points there to make up for the loss of George Russell. They could have had a second and third place, perhaps, maybe, but obviously Fernando Alonso spoiled that party. But yeah, upgrades for Mercedes, and let's just read through the article just a little bit. So the German manufacturers have been encouraged by the step forward that has been delivered by the major update. It's first introduced at the Monaco Grand Prix. A revised floor, new side pods, and different front suspension has delivered podium finishes for Lewis Hamilton in the last two races, and he battled Fernando Alonso hard in Canada last weekend to come home third. But whilst encouraged by the improvement, Mercedes knows it needs to do more if it is to take the fight to Red Bull, which is why it is ready to unleash a package of developments prior to the summer break. Team principal Toto Wolff said that the British Grand Prix next month would be one of two races where the squad was aiming to deliver new parts. We're bringing a larger one to Silverstone, he said. Then we should have another one before the shutdown. It's just the learnings have accelerated a lot since we changed some of the conceptual architecture. There should be decent steps coming in the next 4 races. With Mercedes having got the development path it wanted from its Monaco upgrade, Wolff said that the speed by which the team was finding gains has ramped up considerably. I think we are understanding better the simulations, and that correlates with what we are seeing on track, he explained. That's been a problem over the last 1.5 years. We are seeing good performance gains that are coming in the tunnel. We are seeing a better understanding of what the car needs in order to go faster and what the setup needs to look like. So generally, the steps are getting bigger now. I think we're making good inroads. So, your thoughts?
Well, as I said earlier, it's just making really good gains throughout the rest of the season to be able to get a little bit close to the Red Bulls, as well as just, I think they know they're on the back foot. They're going to have to take a lot of time now to learn how these side pods work. They've got a lot less running with side pods, albeit they've had a good start already since Monaco, but they still have a lot to learn to improve their cars a lot more. I mean, we still saw a lot of porpoising from the Mercedes in Canada. So yeah, maybe they still need to look at the drawing board a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it is too late in the season. They should have never tried to go with the no side pods thing this season. It didn't work last season. How they thought it was going to work this season, I don't quite know. If they'd made this decision that they made in Monaco before the first race, you probably could have seen Mercedes be quite competitive from round 4 onwards, maybe even. So the fact that they've only done it now has cost most of us F1 fans a decent season of competitiveness. But in other news, maybe they're not the team to take it to Red Bull. Maybe it is Aston Martin. As I've got an article here from Formula One on the Formula One official page. It says, has Aston Martin's Canadian Grand Prix upgrade made them a genuine threat to Red Bull? And your thoughts before I even go into the article. Yes or no?
Well, yes, they were much closer already this race weekend to where they've been in the past. So I certainly think they have made quite good gains from Spain till now, where Spain, they were just a little bit off the pace. But yeah, they seem to be a lot closer now.
Yeah, so going into the article, it says the Aston Martin, which Fernando Alonso took to second place in Montreal, just 9 seconds behind the winning Red Bull of Max Verstappen, featured a heavily updated side pod arrangement. The AMR23 side pod arrangement, with its deep water slide channel on its upper surface, was already highly distinctive. The new bodywork retains the same basic layout, but with an enhanced undercut in the front lower edges of the side pods, while the water slide feature has been narrowed and deepened. So a whole lot of fancy things, and it goes on in lots of relative gibberish for most of us listening in. You can go read about all the upgrades, about all the fancy things it's done. But at the end of the day, it seems to have genuinely brought back that pace that we feared Aston Martin would lack when Mercedes brought the new upgrades. And then suddenly last weekend, of course, Fernando Alonso showed this Aston Martin's still quicker than the Mercs, and very much proved it, because obviously, he was very close to Max Verstappen throughout the race, Fernando Alonso, about only 3 to 4 seconds behind him throughout most of it, and only started dropping off when we discovered that he had a rear brake issue.
Yes, I mean, so we certainly haven't seen the true pace of that Aston Martin just yet, but Max Verstappen was also nursing a possible issue as well. I mean, he had he had a bird in his front right brake the entire race from lap 1 till the end.
Yeah, I mean, so I suppose there are other issues we can talk about. We know how quick these Red Bulls are. It's unlikely that Aston Martin's going to get too close to it. But what I did very much enjoy was the first time we'd heard it this entire season was a genuine belief from a driver that they could compete for first place. We heard on the radio over the weekend, Fernando Alonso spoke to the engineers on the side on the pit wall through the obviously while it's on the track. He went and said, when can I stop lifting and coasting? Obviously to protect the brakes at the back there and the tires as well to make them last for the race. When can I stop lifting and coasting? I believe I can win here. So not too far away, maybe.
No, I mean, of course, Fernando Alonso is always going to be super, super competitive, and he's always going to want to try and win the race, even if he is about 5 to 8 seconds back. I don't know if he was necessarily able to be as competitive as he thought he was, but certainly we like to see that drive, and hopefully that does bring them closer to the Red Bulls.
Well, I mean, the one thing about Aston Martin and Fernando Alonso, I would say, especially this season, is they've not once really, I suppose, not delivered on their promise, or at least they've not said something that they've not been able to do. They won't go and say, oh no, we've got such an incredible car, it'll definitely beat Red Bull this weekend, and then they arrive and then they get completely tarnished by Red Bull and say, it didn't quite happen. They've never really made their estimations wild and obscenely unrealistic. They've been genuinely on the ball the entire time. They said, look, we're not going to compete with the Red Bulls this weekend, they've said the one time, but we should be the best of the rest. And they were the best of the rest. And Alonso finished second in the one time there. And then they were aiming for a double podium this weekend. Obviously, the problem is you've got Lance Stroll.
Set their sights a little bit high, unfortunately.
Well, Fernando Alonso got the podium. Lance Stroll is the problem there. It's not so much a car issue, but more of a driver issue in that regard. But if Lance Stroll, of course, had managed to actually do a half-decent qualifying session, and he was further up there, he might well have tried to compete with the Mercs for that podium position. And, they're not far away from where they say they are. So if Fernando Alonso is saying, I can compete with that Red Bull during that race, then maybe they can compete with them in future races to come.
Well, I certainly hope so. As I said already, I want to see more competition for the front of the grid. Max Verstappen has really run away with it now, but yeah, I still hope to see other drivers and other teams being able to get their cars up to the front, because we don't want to see the Red Bulls there the entire season.
No. And Aston Martin's technical director, Dan Fellows, accepted that the side pod alterations were a big visual change, but he was playing down the significance somehow, saying, physically it's a very big update, but there are things less visible we've done to the car before now, which are also quite significant. We are trying to put consistent development on the car rather than wait a few races, then have a big update. So I think that's a small little dig at Mercedes, of course, who said, no, we're waiting, and suddenly, boom, Monaco, we had all these big upgrades, which didn't get to really see until Spain, of course. He says, this is not necessarily the biggest update we've put on the car in terms of performance. He said, the side pods are flow tuning features, conditioning the airflow to the rear of the car, but it also helps the floor to work as well. The philosophy we've adopted, which we are seeing being adopted across the grid, is something which helps the concept of the floor to work as well. In itself, maybe the actual performance increase of the bodywork on its own is not all that much, but it helps everything else to work. So basically saying this upgrade is not actually the upgrade itself that's making it quicker, but it's allowing all the other upgrades to be very efficient, and in so doing, it's quite a significant change.
Yes, they certainly look very different to what they were looking like before. I mean, they've got such a big undercut in that first half, where the air intake is for the radiators. I mean, it's completely different to the Red Bulls, and then it's got that like bath shape that the Ferraris used to have, but with much more of a cut rather than just a bit of a wedge shape. It's very, very interesting. Hopefully they'll be able to extract more pace with those side pods throughout the rest of the season.
And maybe they're not quite competing with Max Verstappen yet, but they're certainly competing with Sergio Perez, who's in a Red Bull. And speaking of Perez, of course, Perez, I've got an article as well here, and we can just discuss a little bit of Sergio Perez, who had dreamed of restarting his season in Canada. How did that go there? So Perez left very concerned by the lack of pace in Canada as he falls further off the championship lead. I mean, just quickly, Reece, your thoughts on Sergio Perez's performance?
To put it into one word, disappointing. I like Sergio Perez. He's done very well throughout his career, and then he was performing brilliantly at the beginning of the season. I was quite excited to see an inter-team battle. We haven't seen him for a while, since, Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton. I was hoping to get another Sebastian Vettel, Mark Webber-esque title fight, but it looks like Sergio Perez has just fallen off the pace a bit. I don't know if that crash in Monaco has really just maybe messed with his head a little bit, messed with his confidence, and he's just really off the pace.
Yeah, and reading the article, it's a bit of an odd one. Yeah, he goes and says in an interview here, he goes and says, today was a bit of a surprise. We just didn't have the pace. It was looking good on the hard tire initially, but once the safety car came in, I couldn't recover the grip on that tire, and we didn't have the pace on the medium, he said. It's important we take time to understand the weekend, because this race in particular has been poor in pace, and we need to get on top of it. I have the confidence in myself, and I know what I can do, but today we were not good. Right now, I am more concerned about my drop in performance than my place in the championship, because the pace is just not there. And I think that's actually goes to exactly what you're saying. It's just, since Monaco, his pace isn't there. Let alone talking about the championship, he just seems to be slow, which is why I say the Aston Martins and the Mercedes and even the Ferraris can compete with the Red Bull of Sergio Perez. Not Max Verstappen, but Sergio Perez, certainly.
It'll be concerning for Red Bull because they're going to start losing a lot of points, which they don't necessarily need, but they would like to take that constructors championship. It's just not looking very promising. I mean, if he keeps up these sort of performances for long enough, Red Bull are going to start looking at replacing him mid-season.
Yeah. And on the other hand, and on the other side of the Red Bull garage, there is, of course, Max Verstappen. And Christian Horner has gone and hailed Red Bull's incredible achievement and sensational after Verstappen won them their 100th F1 victory in Montreal. I mean, how incredible is that? 100 victories there for Red Bull. Not a particularly old team, of course, so it's quite incredible. But then at the same time, as we were saying over the weekend, it also just tells you how new Red Bull are, because Lewis Hamilton has got more than 100 wins.
Yeah, I mean, Lewis Hamilton has, of course, been in the sport for a very long time as well. But yeah, it just shows how dominant he has been over the past few years with Mercedes.
Yeah, so Red Bull reached 100 wins, and of course they celebrated with Adrian Newey taking to the podium over the weekend, and that's who they attribute most of their wins to, the incredible design work and engineering of Adrian Newey, part of the Red Bull team. And Christian Horner got to go and say this when speaking to the Sky Sports F1. He said, "To get a century of victories for the whole team is an incredible achievement. Not just here, but for all the people, the men and women back in the team that put in all the long hours. 100 races is a lot, but 100 wins, that's 27% of all the races we've entered, we've won. It is an incredible, incredible statistic." It was also Verstappen's 41st victory, this is not him speaking, by the way, in the sport, with all coming behind the wheel of a Red Bull race car. When it was put to Horner that the Dutch driver had won 41% of the team's races, he replied, "Max has just been sensational this weekend." It was tricky. It was a tricky race for him today because of the tire temperatures. I think for all the guys, I think that was tough out there. It was quite cool, and the tires weren't in a happy window. Red Bull have won all 8 races so far this season, with Verstappen having won 6 and Sergio Perez also winning twice. Horner was also asked whether winning every Grand Prix race this year was possible, to which he responded, "We're just taking things one race at a time. I don't think you let your mind drift too far into the future, so many things can go wrong. Can we? Yes. Will we? Who knows?" Who knows indeed with regards to Red Bull being able to win every race. I doubt it, but when that first race comes that they don't win, I can't quite foresee yet.
I mean, yeah, it's looking like they're going to be quite dominant for quite some time at the moment if teams are not able to make massive gains in them, because I still think they have that around 20-second gap during the race to other teams at the moment.
Yeah, I think the gap in Canada was not nearly as big as it usually is. Not sure.
I mean, there was a safety car. That is the reason.
Yeah, there was a safety car, so it did pretty much. But the safety car was relatively early on. It wasn't too late into the race. It was about lap 15, 20 of 70. So not, there was still a lot of laps to go and to make up time. But
Max does normally put out quite a lot of a gap in that first stint. On the tires, but yeah, also with that bird in the brakes, it could have just slowed him down a little bit. So yeah, it's difficult to tell, but they still look very, very fast.
And the other team out of the big four that we've not quite talked about yet, and we sometimes always seem to avoid them because they are a bit of the plague in F1 at the moment, and that is Ferrari. They quietly had a very good weekend.
Yes, they finally made some good strategy decisions. I mean, they leapfrogged their drivers up quite a few positions during the safety car.
Yeah, I mean, the Ferrari started in 11th and 10th, respectively, and finished in 4th and 5th. And it doesn't sound that impressive. It's a five-place jump up, which, to be fair, is half decent. But it's the fact that they just did it very intelligently. It was easy for them to do that because, as you say, the safety car came in and Ferrari said, "No, we're staying out. We back ourselves in these tyres." They were the longest running car on mediums. Nobody else went as long as the Ferraris on those medium tyres, which just shows they finally managed to also, which is what has been the bane of Ferrari, have decent time on the tyres in terms of keeping the tyres going.
And you know what that also means, Mark?
What?
It means that they actually asked their drivers how they felt on the tyres and what they thought they should do.
Yeah, and it's amazing. Isn't it amazing that when you work as a team, you can make decisions that are better for the team? It's incredible.
Yes. Weird concept that for Ferrari, but they seem to to be seeing the light eventually. Let's hope they keep on this run for a little bit longer.
And I think the most amazing run over the weekend, which we were also commenting on, and he did in our polls at least get driver of the day, and that was Alex Albon. Sorry?
He also got Formula One's driver of the
Yes.
day on Sunday.
100%, and fully deserves it. And I've got an article here about Alex Albon in that Williams. What an incredible drive that was in Canada by Alex Albon. It was certainly the highlight of my day. It made it exciting for me to watch at least. And just a couple of quotes from him. He says, "It was more than I expected and super happy about his monumental Williams upgrades after the P7 finish in Canada." And in an interview here, he was asked if he was pleased with the result. Albon answered, "It was great. It was super. It was more than I expected, of course. It was stressful as well, I have to say. I don't enjoy those races, but the team loved putting me in those situations. It was good. There was a point in the race when we were on those tires and they told me, 'You've got 40 laps to do on the rest of the race,' and I thought, 'You guys are crazy,' but we made it last. Obviously, the closing speed of the cars behind was quite big, so I didn't think I would be able to hold them off. George looked like he ran into some brake issues, and Esteban didn't have the straight line speed to get past us. It worked in our favor. We know we have a slippery car. The cool track, I just think, helped keep my tires alive long enough and good enough for them not to be able to overtake me. I'm super happy." And yeah, it's the first really good result for Williams all season with regards to Alex Albon finishing in 7th, but it was really down to him more than the car, I feel.
Yes, no, he is certainly just really outdriving that car at the moment. Just looking where his teammate finished, he was the first DNF of the session, albeit to I think it was an engine issue, but still, he hasn't had the greatest season so far. But Alex Albon has really been driving the wheels off of that car and getting it into the points, I think, consistently now. One thing that he will be doing, and people that he will be catching the eye of, is those those in higher management at Red Bull, because he is still a Red Bull contracted driver.
Yeah, maybe he could come back into that first team and take the seat of Sergio Perez, who's really struggling at the moment. Maybe they say, "You know what, Perez, you're being relegated to the Williams for the rest of the season because your performances have not been good enough, and we're going to upgrade Alex Albon." I would love to see what Alex Albon could do in the Red Bull right now, whether or not he outperforms Perez, or whether or not it's like maybe a bit too much of an ask for him suddenly, where he's used to being near the back of the grid.
Well, I think he's certainly proven that he does deserve to get a more competitive car. He's been performing so well, especially in qualifying, where he took pole. Well, not pole. He took first position in quali 2. But yeah, still absolutely brilliant for a Williams. I mean, they've really been so far off the pace for the past few years. Sure, they have brought some upgrades which seem to be working, but I didn't think they were that fast.
No. Yeah, so that moves on from Williams. And fantastic to Alex Albon. Once again, I give him a big clap. But, we're starting to wrap up the show a little bit for this week. Some news, and so the major news really covered so far is the fact that the upgrades worked for Aston Martin over the weekend, and hopefully they can take the fight to Red Bull a little bit more. Mercedes, of course, got some great big upgrades coming. But one other thing that we haven't spoken about is the FIA.
Yes.
And they are hinting at an F1 grid access clampdown after the Spanish Grand Prix incident. They're only deciding this now, of course. It's still after now the Canada Grand Prix. And it goes and says, the FIA has hinted at a clampdown on pre-race grid access for top series, including Formula One, after an incident involving Neymar at this year's Spanish Grand Prix. Celebrities, invited guests, and members of the international media are permitted in limited numbers to join series officials and team personnel on the grid in the build-up to races for Formula One, Formula E, the World Endurance Championship, and so on. However, this access is currently under scrutiny after guests, including Brazilian footballer Neymar Jr., were still positioned at the edge of the grass on the main straight as the formation lap for this month's Spanish Grand Prix got underway. This case comes as an FIA World Motorsport Council awaits the findings of a review into a track invasion late on during the Australian Grand Prix in April. Race officials were summoned to the stewards in the immediate aftermath. So there's clearly a problem this season so far with regards to, I suppose,
grid access
and the safety with regards to individuals and making their way onto the track. So would you back the idea of maybe clamping down more on who's allowed to be there, or maybe at least the they need to be let out earlier, type of thing. They're staying there for way too long, perhaps, or otherwise, problems.
Yeah, normally they remove all of the celebrities and guests while the drivers are getting into their cars and getting ready to get going. But at the moment, it just looks like that's not being enforced properly. And when it's just supposed to be mechanics and car personnel left on the track, it's still got a bunch of celebrities and guests who should be far away by then, because of course it's unsafe for them to be anywhere near an active track.
Yeah, and it's also amazing because I'm fairly certain, and completely correct me if I'm wrong, because I feel like my memory's going fuzzy, but it was this season, wasn't it, where we also had that big incident in the pit lane with regards to all the photographers trying to come out and take pictures.
Yes, it was in Azerbaijan.
Yeah, and so we have that incident as well. We have the Neymar incident, we have the Melbourne incident. It's only 8 races in, and we've got multiple incidents of fans entering the track incorrectly, getting into unsafe areas, really putting risky situations into the forefront of Formula One. And one has to wonder, why is this consistently happening?
Yes, it's certainly quite concerning for a lot of fans who want to go to Formula One races. You don't know if necessarily things are planned out as they should be, because we are seeing multiple issues like this. We've seen issues in the past where there wasn't enough sanitation provided at certain racetracks. There wasn't enough food and beverages as well to last for all of the people there. I think that was at Monza, I think 2 or 3 years ago. It's something that you have to be concerned about as a Formula One fan.
The last little bit of news that I think I could just speak about, and I have a small little feature name there, is I have to bring him up every podcast because it is Reece's favourite driver, how much he would love for him to be back in Formula One, and he fights for him, and I know a lot of people don't, but Mick Schumacher is on standby, according to The Mirror. This is The Mirror. But Mick Schumacher is on standby to replace struggling F1 star under pressure after the Canadian Grand Prix. Can you hazard a guess as to who the struggling F1 star is?
Well, there's 2.
Well, there's 1.
Lance Stroll?
I wish, but that wouldn't be the case, no.
No, Logan Sargent.
Yes. So, do you think that's at all possible? Because, look, I mean, Canada wasn't his fault. We know that.
That wasn't his.
The car blew out. We know that wasn't his fault. But it's another 20th place for him.
Yes, I mean, Albon has shown that car can get points. So the pressure is really on now to Logan Sargent to get out of that top 10. I think they'll give him a few more races. If he doesn't improve by then, I wouldn't be surprised if he does get the boot, because every point in Formula One is a lot of money. So you want to be scoring as much as you can with the car that certainly can.
Yeah, and also, you think about, I suppose the politics comes into play with regards to Logan Sargent, because there are still another 2 USA races. Another 2, don't forget, but not just 1, 2. So we still got Las Vegas, and we still got LA. Is it LA?
No, we don't.
Not LA.
No, it's
Texas. Sorry, Texas and Las Vegas still to come. And he's the American hero boy, whatever. How much is that going to help him keep his seat?
I think the amount of money his dad or whoever his sponsor is brings to that team means a bit more than that. But that might also be a small aspect in it. Of course, Formula One is trying to become more appealing to the American market, but we do already have an American Formula One team. I don't see the appeal in having a American Formula One driver if he's useless.
Yeah, and we've got the big break coming up. It's just after Silverstone, of course. So we've got Austria not this weekend, but the following weekend, and then we've got Silverstone the weekend after that. So we've got 2 tight races, and then we've got a long break, a bit of a long break. I think it's a 3-week or 4-week break, and that's where you see contracts and otherwise shifts and big decisions made. And if Logan Sargent does not perform well in Austria and Silverstone, do you foresee him getting the boot?
I hope so, because I think, well, depending on how his next few races are, if he starts turning things around and bringing himself up into the points, then sure, he deserves to keep the seat. If he keeps finishing last, then I think it's his turn to get out of that seat and let Mick have a try. because it doesn't it doesn't hurt putting Mick in for half a season and seeing if he's better than Sargent or not.
And I suppose going to my earlier comment with regards to Logan Sargent being an American, it's great for American advertising. Mick Schumacher being a Schumacher surely is also great advertising for the sport. So it certainly will be interesting. And I know Toto Wolff is certainly, and this is known as a fact, Toto Wolff is very much pushing behind the scenes to have Mick back in a Formula One car ASAP. He certainly believes in Mick Schumacher, and if Toto Wolff, of all people, believes in you, certainly that might tell you something about the driver himself. So I know a lot of people are skeptical of Mick Schumacher, say he's only there because of the name, but Haas did not support him. We know that as a fact. They didn't like him, and I wonder how
he's won Formula 2 and Formula 3 in very competitive years.
Exactly. And
I think he has proven,
and not just that, of course, if he's put into a team that can support him in F1, who knows what he could do? I mean, he might well be one of the much better drivers in the grid. We don't actually know because he's been in Formula One in a team that supports him properly. So maybe Williams do support him for the rest of the season if he somehow gets Logan Sargent's seat. That's the big if.
Yes, it's a big ask, but we never know. This is silly season. Anything can change.
It'll certainly be a welcome change for me. At least it's certainly a bit more of a, I suppose. Logan Sargent for me is also just a bit of a boring character. Like, he just doesn't add anything for me. It's just that's my personal opinion. He just doesn't add anything. At least Yuki Tsunoda, even if he races badly, he's good entertainment. He's good fun to watch. He's funny. But I just get nothing from Logan Sargent. But anyway, that's of course the news for the week, everybody. Thank you so much for watching Forever F1, Forever Motorsports, the Forever F1 podcast. On Forever Sports. Reece, do you have any closing comments?
No, just really looking forward to the next 2 races before the break. I think they should be quite competitive. They're both very traditional tracks that drivers and teams know very well. So I think we're in for a good 2 races.
Yeah, perfect. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and turn on notifications to be notified about all future uploads and live streams and everything else for Motorsporty. Of course, also go and check out our partner channel, Forever Motorsports. That's where we do exclusive and only Formula One content and motorsport content, and you're not barraged with all the other sports on the channel as well. So if you only want to see Forever Sports stuff, Forever Motorsport stuff, go check that channel out as well. Otherwise, I've been Mark. Reece has been Reece. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.